could never, in my wildest nightmares, have ever imagined the horrors that could plague even the most simple of life's enjoyments. The darkness that could invade any world, whether it be real or fictional. It all started the day me and my girlfriend were talking about video games we used to play growing up, and games that we used to enjoy. Over the years of my childhood, I have collected several games pertaining to several different consoles, but we both found the topic of the Nintendo 64 to be the most fun. So, that day, we decided to pick up from my uncle's video game store, and perhaps even pick up the greatest Nintendo 64 titles, Super Mario 64. Now, when we got there, it took some time and a lot of browsing, but we were able to find the game after about an hour or so in several bins he had placed throughout the store. The only copy he had appeared. As well as that, we had found an N64, the very last one they had in stock, ironically, and best part about it was he would give it to us for free. He told me that it had been bought and returned nearly 15 times since it came into his possession, and now he was just looking to get rid of it. He also told me that, ironically, the game was also returned with it, as well as they always seemed to be bought together. He had heard that something was wrong with one or the other, and that some people even went as far as to tell him that they are evil, made in hell, things like that. Seeing as how he only heard the story from 3 out of 15 customers, I brushed it off as just a hysterical story told by people who decided they simply didn't want to keep the system, an excuse if you will. I gave him $20 for Super Mario 64. Cheap jerk gave me the N64 for free though. We went back home after being gone for about an hour and a half. When I got home, I laid the system by my living room TV and started to rummage through the old boxes where I kept all sorts of old games, ranging from classic Atari games to the ever-popular Dreamcast. It was actually sort of strange, because in these boxes I found that I owned every major console except for an N64. Well, until now anyways. I pulled out my box with all the N64 games in it and began digging through it. I found games like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, as well as the sequel Majora's Mask, and 2 Castlevania titles for the system itself, and so on, and then it was time to hook it up. After everything was set up, my girlfriend decided that she wanted to put in Super Mario 64 first, and after some effort, the game was ready to go. "It's a me, Mario," it called out in its upbeat pitch. My girlfriend decided to mess with Mario's face a bit before finally pressing start on her purple controller, and the screen transitioned to the file select screen. There were some files already on the game. In fact, all 4 slots were filled, each having just started the game because there was no stars in any file, so we started deleting them. After we deleted file 1, however, the game froze and there was a deafening screech coming from our TV speakers, and it sounded almost as if someone was screaming from the game itself. My girlfriend turned off the system after about 5 seconds. After a moment, she flipped it on, and we went back to the file select screen. Strangely enough, the file that we had deleted on file 1 was back, and this time it had 66 stars, even though previously it had none. So, once more she deleted it, and again it made that loud screeching sound. This time I swear to God that it was louder than before, to the point where we both fell back while covering our ears. As we were closer to the plug than the system itself, I jerked it out of the wall. This time, before we both tried again, I took the game out of the system and took it into the kitchen. It turned out that the game was really dusty, and explained, at least to me, why the game was reacting the way it was. Although it was still weird, after cleaning it with a Q-tip, I took it back to the living room and I handed it to her. She plugged the console back into the wall, and we were ready to go. By now it was getting dark out. There was no light in the room, and we couldn't plug it in our lamp because the system and TV took up the outlet, so we were forced to play in the dark. For me, something didn't feel right, because for some reason I just felt the sense of nervousness that I could not quite explain. I shook it off and turned on the system. When we were back at the file select screen, each file there was previously gone, oddly enough, which to me confirmed my suspicion that it was just a dirty game messing up. So we started a new game on file 1, and the screen lagged like it were a CD or something. After about a minute started it up normally, we got the opening scene with Peach inviting Mario to the castle, and the camera as usual followed up with the pathway to the giant green pipe which Mario leaped out of. She was in control of the game and took Mario directly to the castle. When she opened the door to the castle, there was a prolonged pause which made me nervous. Once again, this loud screech that ruined our game previously shot through our ears, and it felt like glass was jabbed into my eardrums. We were both overwhelmed because of the terrible screaming and could not even think to reach for the system plug. After about 30 seconds it stopped and we looked up at the TV. Mario had somehow found his way to Big Boo's haunt, as the mansion that had never appeared this creepy when I used to play it loomed over Mario's head ominously. What the hell, I said as I regained myself. My girlfriend was still getting herself together, and it took her a minute to process what was going on. I took the controller now and took a good look at the mansion itself. It was nothing like it was supposed to be. It had castle-like features actually, and it was covered totally in blood and rust. The sky had black and red colors about complemented by the black clouds that seemed to pass by in an instant. I noticed that a new tower was now coming out of the mansion, and upon getting a good look at it, I noticed several figures hanging from it. The whole screen faded to white, like it does in an entrance room when you look out the skylight and go to the world that you can obtain the wing cap in. And Mario reappeared. He had somehow made it to the top of the tower on a platform that went all the way around the sky. It had a gloomy look, and each cloud passed over the tower, as dark as the night sky, and lightning began to rule the sky, illuminate the clouds, and thunder us awake. I tried for the first time to move Mario forward, but a bolt of light stopped any movement that I was willing to make at the moment. I dropped the controller, my heart began to race. I didn't know what to expect, and I could see by the look in my girlfriend's eyes that a strong sense of paranoia had overcome her, because I constantly noticed her looking back behind us in the shadows that covered the room. With hesitation, I took the controller in hand and moved Mario forward about a foot or so before something fell from the top of the screen and the camera zoomed in on it. It was a depiction of Mario, with a noose around his neck. We both yelled out, and I dropped the controller on the floor. I moved back as quickly as possible. Mario's clothes were ripped all over, exposing several parts of his body. Underneath the clothes, we could make out stab wounds from either a knife or dagger, which more than likely caused the blood spatter all over his skin and remaining clothes. But the most grotesque part of the image was his eyelids and mouth, sewn shut with blood trickling down his cheeks and chin. I was appalled at the gruesome sight. My heart was racing, and I would swear to this day that all the moment the dead Mario fell from the top of the screen that I heard something run into my bedroom. All the hung figures were all of Mario, all the exact same, with eyelids and mouths sewn shut, and stab wounds all over the body. I worked up the courage I could muster. Again, I plugged the N64, which turned off, but not at that instant. Before the TV screen went black, the hung face of Mario, underneath his sewn lips, was smirking at us. I didn't want to get up, not even to turn on the lights. I wanted to remain in the exact spot sitting down because at least I felt somewhat safe. But for my girlfriend's sake, I plugged the lamp in and lit up the room. Everything was peaceful, perhaps a calm after the storm. I took a deep breath and sat down. I couldn't get that image out of my head, that smirk. I felt powerless as what my mind wanted to remain on. I sat on the floor next to my girlfriend and hugged her, picked her up, and took her to bed. Who in the hell would make a game like that? It had to be the game. It had to be hacked. It's the only thing that made sense to me. What I saw in that game, I defined it as evil in its sickest form. Without a word between us, we laid in bed for what felt like hours before one of us broke the silence. She told me that she wanted to get rid of the game as soon as possible. As it would already late, I decided that it would be best to wait until tomorrow because I was sure that my uncle's store was closed and GameStop didn't take games that old. So we stayed in bed and agreed that we would not play that game again. But I couldn't get it out of my head still. I wanted to know why or how this was done. My curiosity got the better of me. In the end, and after she had fallen asleep, Holly got out of bed, they went back into the living room, plugged in the N64, and didn't turn it on. Didn't have to. The game itself. Not only did it pick up exactly where it left off, I was astounded by this because I had never seen the N64 do anything like that. Right then and there, I knew that there was more to this than I knew, and I had to know what. I was fascinated, drawn in perhaps. I got a good look around the tower. Despite being disgusted, I was morbidly fascinated by the entire scene. The paranoia it could convey was intriguing. After a few minutes looking around, I pressed the pause button and again the screen faded, this time to black. It took me all the way back to the file select screen and I found myself with more questions than answers. All the files are back. Again, file 1 had 66 stars, which files 2, 3, and 4 had none. I tried to remember back when we picked the file and I was certain that they were not there before. I tried loading file 4 first, and in response the game showed me a picture of Mario dead in a pool of his own blood, with his eyeballs and entrails hanging out. After a shutter, it allowed me to hit B and go back. I tried loading file 3, and again I got another appalling picture. It was Mario, once again staring directly into the screen with bloodshot eyes that looked so close to real that I really thought that they were. His mouth was gaping open and his tongue missing. Well, it wasn't missing from his mouth at least. I examined further and realized that Mario's tongue was wrapped around his throat, and that he was being strangled with it. I heard a chuckle of sorts, not for the game, but it sounded like it was directly behind me. I ignored it against my better judgment. I tried to start up File 2 now, and a video began to play. Mario was strapped down on a table in a decrepit version of the castle entrance hall. Stones were all black, blood oozing from the cracks between each of them, curtains that hung from the ceiling that were tattered and falling apart. They appeared to be worn with years in the background. Peach and Toad were strapped to both sides of the door that led to the basement area. Toad had the mushroom of his head torn off. I could make out his skull showing through the still fresh wound. He was obviously dead. Peach sent me into a state of awe. Her skin was peeled off and I could see fully formed was her head, which remained untouched. Jesus Christ, I said slightly as the video continued. Mario struggled for freedom as the door upstairs opened and a black mass slowly came through. Its footsteps solemnly echoed through the silent hall. The curtains on the ceiling below blew casually as its passing as it moved down the steps towards him. Mario pulled and pulled but found no way to escape the situation that he had found himself in. In response, he began to beg for his life and prayed. The black mass inched closer to the hero as it seemed as though Mario gave up. The black mass walked around the table and stopped directly in front of Mario. Again, the hero begged, pleaded for his life. He told the black mass that he would do anything, only spare him for any crime that he committed against it. I saw a tear roll down Mario's cheek as he closed his eyes tightly. A rope tied around his neck, he gagged and took in only heavy breaths. You could see a hand so much as touched the rope, or where it even came from, but it was indeed there, with just enough slack so that Mario could breathe. Deep lacerations cut through Mario's clothes, and blood by the gallons covered him in a crimson pool. He screamed, begged, pleaded, asked for death, but it was not given to him. Not yet, anyways. The cuts continued until the floor was covered in a dark red liquid, exploding slowly to the floor. Finally, the swipes and stabs ceased to an end, and there was a deep, methodical silence that only Mario's gasps of misery filled before I could so much as think of what I had just seen. His eyes and mouth were forced shut. I could see before myself a black needle going through both of his eyelids and mouth simultaneously, effectively silencing him. Other than his muffled screams, even more blood came through the fresh wounds and covered up his face. The rope tightly around Mario's neck, although he made no effort to escape. It was over. After a few short grunts, Mario was silent altogether. With not so much a breath or a movement, his face was terror personified. And even through this is a video game, the pain one would have to endure, the torture. Oh my god, again before the screen faded to black, that Mario smirked at me. I sat in silence. The title screen with Mario's head came on the screen. Only, it wasn't the same Mario. The background was all black and Mario was the same. Mario from the scene that I had just watched. He had that smirk still on. After much debate, I decided to keep going. I went to the file select screen and with all the courage that my heart could muster, I loaded File 1. 66 stars. The game loaded to a demonic laugh and only a black sky filled with blood-red clouds. Repeatedly, you could hear a dark, brooding voice saying, "Game over," like Mario would after you lost all your lives. The Mario that I was controlling was the same Mario that I had seen killed, and on the title screen, streams, torment bodies littered the pathway to the castle. The bodies of Peach, several Toads, and at the end, a dead Bowser, whose head was missing and whose body was impaled on a pike right outside of the bridge. I entered the castle and found myself back at Big Boo's haunt. I didn't question anymore. I just went with it. The scene had not changed, not even slightly, and ignoring all the graphic details, I entered the mansion. To what I was sure would strike my heart in some shape or form. I could feel something circling and enclosing around me. I ignored it. I had to. I needed to know what this was, or what was going on. Something whispered in my ear. I was sure of it. I gulped at the screen signage into the hallway of Big Boo's haunt. The room with all of the doors, the bodies of faceless Marios were hung all over the ceiling, illuminated by only torches. I could feel sweat trickling down the back of my neck as I saw a standalone figure all the way on the upper balcony. I moved Mario slowly towards it. I was afraid. I am more than willing to admit that I have never been more afraid in my life. I jumped up the steps one more time, moving cautiously and carefully. It was another hung man, that was for certain, but who it was I'll never forget. As I reached the body, I hesitated, but zoomed in on it. I began to tremble, my hands barely holding the controller. The figure was indeed a man hung by a rope. That man had his eyes and mouth sewn shut, just like Mario, and was bleeding profusely from his eye sockets. That man, and all of his pain, was me. I let out a scream, something haunting and bone-chilling, and a wail like nothing that I had ever heard. The screen began to flicker and turn to static. I tried to turn off the system. I tried to unplug it, and nothing worked. The TV wouldn't turn off. I saw my corpse through the static burning as its haunting wail had yet to cease. Mario had turned his head 180 degrees and looked at the screen, and with a smirk on his face, let out a wail just like I did. My head began to hurt and throb. I fell to the floor, and the last thing I remember from the night was seeing a black mass hovering over me.